Could you give it up? I'm talking to ya, but I'm spinning round in circles again and again. It's not cutting through to ya, babe. It feels like you would rather go get drunk with your friends. So tell me, what do I have to do to get your attention? Oh honey, what am I supposed to do? Cause if it isn't obvious that I need us, cause lately lust is all trust. Love, I need you to listen to me. So girl, just shut your mouth tonight. Cause I've been trying to tell you, babe, that you are the one. And I think that we can get this right. But I need love, need trust. I ain't asking for much. If you can give it up, just let me know. Love's kinda hard to hurt. Yeah, it's gonna hurt, but I don't care.
So I'm going to start by going over the books that I read in January, and I read 2 books in January. So I read a self-care book and I read a classical book, or non-fictional and a fictional book. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the first book I read in January, and that was A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I have a little description here on Notion that I put out of kind of my thoughts and stuff of the book, and I'm going to go through some of my favorite quotes that I have in the book. So the story revolves around a portrait of Dorian Gray painted by Basil Hayward, an artist impressed and infatuated by Dorian's beauty. Through Basil, Dorian meets Lord Henry Wotton, and he soon is enthralled by the aristocratic, hedonistic worldview that beauty and sensual fulfillment are the only things worth pursuing in life. Newly understanding that his beauty will fade, Dorian expresses a desire to sell his soul to ensure that the portrait, rather than he, will age and fade. The wish is granted, and Dorian pushes a libertine life of varied immoral experiences while staying young and beautiful, all while his portrait ages and recorded every one of Dorian's sins. So this book is very deep in a philosophical kind of worldview on life. So pretty much this book is kind of a representation of Oscar Wilde through the different characters. So there's another thing on GOODREADS that I'm going to read that I found very interesting about the book. And it says of Dorian Gray's relationship to autobiography, Wilde noted in a letter, Basil Hayward is what I think I am. Lord Henry is what the world thinks of me. Dorian is what I'd like to be, in other ages perhaps. I honestly love Oscar Wilde's writing. I think you do have to kind of have the mindset this was written back in the 1890s, so a lot of the things won't really go now, but if you look at it as a classic and a study, it's just so beautifully written. It's very poetic how it feels, and I adored the book. And if you aren't into like the sensitive topics such as these, then I think it'd be a great book to read. Personally, my favorite is either Dorian or Henry. I don't agree with all the things they say, but like the philosophical psyche of this book is such an interesting study, and it has such a great understanding of humankind and human nature. And I think the whole point of this book is for Dorian to live longer and live a fulfilled life. So very much enjoying your youth and enjoying what you live for and what you work for. But at the same time, when you have all that time and all that power, having all that power can corrupt your soul and that can affect you. That's what this book talks about. One of my favorite classics by all time. It talks about so many things that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about. And for a classical book, it is very short. It's only like 300 pages or so. So I read some very deep things in January, but A Picture of Dorian Gray is definitely one of my favorite. And here are some quotes on the screen that I love very dearly that I just thought I should put in. But yeah, I would recommend this book to everyone. I absolutely adore it. I love the writing of it. You get to love the characters, you get to hate the characters, but all the characters are human. Like, there's never an antagonist and a protagonist. They all kind of have inner dilemmas that each of the characters need to solve. And it is a beautiful book. The time period is beautiful. It does have some deep topics, but I would definitely recommend it. So A Picture of Dorian Gray gets a recommended for me, and it is on my GOODREADS recommendation list, which will be linked down below. So, okay. So now, moving on from The non-fictional classical that I have read was The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Did A Picture of Dorian Gray influence me to read this book? Maybe. But I would have to say this is another great book. It's another kind of human psychology study because it talks about the 48 laws of power. So this book is a very how to gain your way through life. All of Robert Greene's books are this way. I know if you have read Robert Greene, you would understand. And even if you are not looking for how to do these things, I would still recommend it because it does have a lot of historical figures. So each law has this, which is law number 1, and then it has the judgment of the law describing it, and it has this transgression of the law, which means how the historical figure or the example put in this book went against the law and how they kind of took the opposite side of the law. And then you have the interpretation, so kind of explaining the story. Then you have the observance of the law, so showing how the law was worked and how they used the law in their favor. And then you have the interpretation once again, and then you have the key to the power, how to use it. And each one of these have little like side notes to kind of show different like fables and short stories and stuff like that. So it pretty much has a bunch of different philosophy in it, a bunch of different philosophical viewpoints, and different stories of historical figures and how they thought and how they got to where they're at in power, and how also some of the power wasn't good and it harmed them in the end. Every kind of religion and aspect of life is in this book because it talks about how to play the game of life pretty much, and that's what I really love about the book. Robert Greene is an exceptional author, so I think even if you're not into these kind of things, because both books I read in January are pretty deep and you would have to think very deeply on this and kind of go into a different mindset when you read them, but I think even if you're not looking for that, to read this book you would understand how people are. And I think you better understand how people work and how this game of life is won and how people have gotten to where they're at in life. Because everyone has intentions, and it's easier to learn about people's intentions and see through people's intentions when you learn how to get those intentions yourself. I absolutely love this book. It was a wonderful read. I want to read all of Robert Greene's books. I absolutely love his writing. I definitely would recommend this book. I absolutely adored it. Yeah, so A Picture of Dorian Gray and The 48 Laws of Power are what I both read in January, and both I recommend very much so. So let's get into the books that I picked out and that I am reading for February. Okay, so I have 3 books here. So I'm going to talk about the first book that I'm currently reading in February that I've had, and I'm going to talk about the books that I picked up today during the video at Barnes & Noble. So let's talk about the book that I currently have that I'm currently reading for February, and it is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I have not fully finished the book. I have about this much to do, which is quite a bit, but I have been slowly working my way through this book, and this book, let me tell you, when people say that it is going to become a classical book, and if it does not, that's going to be sad, it's this book. Absolutely poetic. All the things I said about Dorian Gray, how it was beautifully written and stuff, this book is amazing. It also references A Picture of Dorian Gray and Oscar Wilde in this, as well as The Odyssey, Ernest Hemingway, a bunch of classical authors in this book hit the spot. I have highlighted so much in it. So pretty much this book talks about a girl called Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with the devil because she doesn't really like where she is in life, and she was born in France in like the 1700s, and she in a small village, and she had to grow up kind of with that way, and she didn't like that way of living at the time, and she wanted to change, so she makes a deal to live forever and have more time. But the downside to this is that every wish has a consequence, and that living forever is not a good thing. So she is able to live forever, and she has lived for 300 years now when this book starts to take place. And it takes place in New York City, and then it has flashbacks to Paris, France, which I absolutely adore because those are both my favorite cities. It goes through how she would run into people and have these beautiful relationships with people, but they'll never remember her. So she'll walk by, she'll meet a person, she'll have a night with them, and then she'll leave the next morning, and it'll be like they will never remember it, and they never know her true name, they never know her backstory, but she has to leave. And it is such poetic feeling, and it's just how it's written, it makes you feel like you're in this world. And I would recommend listening to classical music while you read this because it hits, it's so good. So it's beautifully written, I absolutely love it, and I don't have enough words to say about this book. I'm not finished it yet, and I feel like when I do finish it I'm going to cry so much, but This book is so beautiful, so amazing, and it has the green and the gold and black. Once again, I recommend this book so much, and I would definitely pick up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue if you ever get a chance. So that's the book I'm currently reading in February, but I have 2 other books I picked up today in the video. So the books that I picked up are No Longer Human by Okumura Dazai and The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. So let's start off with No Longer Human by Okumura Dazai. So this is a Japanese classical book that has been very well known on, these are both TikTok books, but it's been very well known on TikTok and different communities online. I'll read you the back of it. So portraying himself as a failure, the protagonist, No Longer Human, narrates a seemingly normal life, even while he feels himself incapable of understanding human beings. Oba Yozo attempts to recline himself to the world around him beginning in early childhood, continuing through high school where he becomes a clown to mask his alienation, and eventually leads to a failed suicide attempt as an adult. Without seemingly, he recorded the casual cruelties of life and its fleeting moments of human connection and tenderness. So once again, this is another human psyche book study. So this book talks about alienation and not fitting in and not feeling like you really understand humans. So it talks about being alone and kind of going through that and how it affects a person and how you have to cope with it. So that's another great study that I love, and I'm excited to read this book and see, because I know it's going to be heart-wrenching, but it's pretty much like a semi-autobiography because Oba Yozo is the main character in the book, but it's pretty much the telling of Dazai Okumura's life through this book. So it's pretty much his autobiography, but through a fictional character. So this book I'm definitely excited to read. I picked it up because I've been wanting to read it for a while, and I feel like it's definitely going to be a good one. So I will update you that next month once I finish it. Okay, so the next book I got, because I got it because it was February and I wanted a cute little lovey-dovey book. So I saw this book also on TikTok, and it is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. So I'll read you the back of the book, and it says, as a third-year PhD candidate, Olive Smith doesn't believe in lasting romantic relationships, but her best friend does, and that's what got her into this situation, convincing Anna that Olive is dating and well on her way to happily ever after. It was going to take more than hand-wavy Jedi mind tricks. Scientists require proof. So, like any self-respected biologist, Olive panics and kisses the first man she sees. This man is no other than Adam Carlson, a young hotshot professor and a well-known jerk, which is why Olive is positively floored when Stanford's Resign Lab tyrant agrees to keep her charade a secret and be her fake boyfriend. And while her big scientific conference goes haywire, putting Olive's career on the Bunsen burner, Adam surprises her with an unyielding support and even more unyielding. You can read the back to know what it says. Suddenly, their little experiment feels dangerously close to combustion, and Olive discovers that the only thing more complicated than a hypothesis on love is putting her own heart under the microscope. So it takes place at Stanford, it's a bunch of biology and stuff, but it looks like such a cute book and a cute little read. I'm excited to read this book, just like a little lovey-dovey romance. I've been reading some deep stuff, so I think I'm gonna kind of like go towards some maybe cute, fluffy things. Maybe I've heard this book isn't, I guess it's cute, but I've heard there's some unfluffy things in it, but I'm excited to read this book very much so. I thought it was such a cute little book. So, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I will also tell you how that is. So, that is all of the books I have, but I hope you did enjoy the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Also, if you have any book recommendations, leave them down below. I literally love to read, if you cannot tell. I adore reading, and I'm also working on my own book. So, if you have any recommendations or anything, let me know down below. And also my GOODREADS and all my social medias are linked down below. So I will see you in the next video. So I hope you have a great day or night whenever you are watching this, and I will see you next time. Bye!